Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, aka the Bod Father, and as always, I bring you guys awesome interviews. And today it is an honor and privilege to have Mr. Joe Giron on here. He is the owner of Joe Giron Photography, founded back in 1989. He's also photographed other bands and artists such as AC/DC, David Bowie, Gwen Stefani, Van Halen, and U2, plus some sporting events also. He has a book that's out, and this is very cool, and I'm glad he's done this because us Pantera fans, we needed this. It's a Vulgar display of Pantera, the first ever authorized visual history of the band. So, Joe, how's it going, my man?
It's going very well, thank you. How you doing today?
Doing awesome. Like I said, it's an honor to have you on here, man. Let's dive
Thank
right
you.
in. Let's dive right into this. You shot photographs of Pantera since 1983. How did this come about, and how was working with the band up until they pretty much just quit, of Pantera? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure, no problem. As I say in the book, which obviously people can read as well, but I interviewed for a job in Fort Worth, Texas, my last quarter of college at Ohio University. I got flown into to Fort Worth to interview for a staff photographer position that would come open in 1983. And actually, on the very first night that I was there for the interview, I actually saw Pantera. At the time, it didn't really register that this was a band named Pantera or whatever, but I just remember seeing a really good cover band that was essentially performing the cover tunes better than the actual people like Kiss or Def Leppard could, and they were just really phenomenal. And like I said, it really didn't sink in as to who the band was. But by the summer of '83, I got the job there in Fort Worth, and by the summer of '83, I was out going to various clubs, and Pantera actually got booked as the house band at a club in Fort Worth called the Roxy. And once I saw them there, I kind of put two and two together, and that this was the same band I saw on the night that I came into town to interview for the job, and just kind of saw them over the years. And eventually, actually, in 1985, is when I did my first work with them. The newspaper, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, decided to do a story on this local band, trying to make it, on the national and international spotlight. They had booked their own show at the Bronco Bowl, which was about a 2,000 or 3,000 seat venue on the outskirts of Dallas. And them and a couple other bands performed. Pantera headlined, and so myself and the music critic from the newspaper went there to do a feature story on the band and their show, and essentially went backstage, shot some pictures there as they were getting ready, shot the show, and then after the article was published, I got a call from Jerry Abbott, Dime and Vinny's dad, their manager and producer, and he said the band absolutely loved the pictures. They were some of the best pictures he'd ever seen taken of the band, and would I mind coming out to do some other shows? And it just kind of progressed from there, and as the cliche goes, the rest is history.
It's amazing how this band carried the torch for metal music and just pretty much kicked everyone's ass about it,
Yeah, I could certainly tell just in those club days that this band was heading somewhere. I mean, you can just tell when you walk into a club, and just your jaw drops, and they were that good, that tight. Yeah. The musicianship that Vinny, Diamond, Rex performed, and just the sort of chemistry they had amongst themselves, just because they had grown up together, it was just amazing. And obviously in these early days was with their previous singer, Terry Glaze, who in his own right was a hell of a front man. Obviously after Phil joined the band moved in a heavier direction, and Phil was the perfect person to essentially form the Pantera that we all know and love now. But when Terry was in the band, obviously there were more melodic cover tunes, and that was also witnessed on Pantera's first three independent releases. But in his own right, Terry Glaze was a hell of a front man, and the band were destined for glory. You could see that early on.
Oh yeah, and I tell everybody, I'm like, Pantera didn't just come on the scene as Pantera, as heavy Pantera. They had a little glam rock in before all this. They're like, oh, you're crazy. Like, no, go back and listen to the whole band. I mean, seriously, start from the beginning till now. And it's awesome. I'm glad they did what they did for us, man.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously fans will be able to, if they buy the book, see that early incarnation of Pantera with Terry, and then obviously Phil's induction into the band, and then, their steady sort of shift in image and the way they presented themselves. And yeah, it's the whole progression from the early years to essentially the very last tour that they did, headlining, and had Slayer and Morbid Angel on the bill right before 9/11 happened.
Joe, what's impressed you the most about getting this book together once it started to become a reality? Are these mainly your photos, and did the band give you some photos and stuff like that, and plus input on this also?
They are all my creations. The
Okay.
band that didn't provide anything. It's just everything that I had obviously archived. And about 7 or 8 years ago, I set a goal to try and get as many, not all, but as many of the better photos I had of the band scanned, which is a major task in terms of just sitting at a computer and putting the images through a film scanner, and then obviously having to tweak them and make them to where they're presentable and stuff. So over all those years, I think I eventually now have around 3,200 images of Pantera scanned.
Mm-hmm.
I have 1,000 up on my website, but once the book comes out, I'm going to make public the other 2,000. I've kind of had them in private galleries, just waiting for the book to eventually be released. But to answer your question, they're all my pictures, just what I did in terms of documenting their career over the years.
Did you ever think of putting a book together at some point of photos of the band when this was going on? And what was the input with the band on this? Did they help at all? At any?
Yeah, I actually did think about putting out a book and approached Walter O'Brien, who was managing the band at the time for Concrete Management, and the band themselves. This was around the time of the 97 Ozfest tour, and we talked about it and said, yeah, maybe we'll figure something out and whatnot, but it just kind of, it eventually didn't go anywhere. And in terms of input from the band, Rex Brown, the bass player, provided the forward for the book and also sort of commented on some of the images. We supplied Rex with a sort of a pre-copy of what we had put together, and just let him kind of talk about some of the images and the memories it brought back for him, and what was going on at the time. And then we also got Vinnie Paul to contribute some quotes to it as well. So the band is represented in terms of input into the book.
I know this is pretty hard. It's probably like picking your favorite child, but can you pick a favorite photo in this book for you, possibly, or no?
Like you said, it is very tough, just because you are so proud of everything you've done with the band. I think just in terms of, I guess we'll put it in this respect. I think the most fun photo I had was, and you'll see a couple of them in the book, and there's actually a Polaroid of me and Dimebag during the shoot. Is nice. The one where we did the advertising campaign for his guitar company, and one of the guitars was called the Dime Slime. And so we ended up doing a shoot for the various guitars that Dime had. And for this particular one, we came up with an idea to actually put Dime in some green slime. And so we did this at his house there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, cut out a kiddie pool, put a hole right in the middle of it, lined it with a bunch of black plastic, and then we made a concoction, sort of a paper mache type of concoction that he could, with some green food coloring, and he just put Dime right in the middle of this pool and just started pouring this green slime over him, and we just had a hoot doing the pictures.
I actually got to see that one. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's also in the home videos as well, so you get to see Dime in the videos all slimed up there.
You got to see the band on and off the road. How were they on and off the road? Were they any different off the road, or no, just same old guys?
They were the same old guys. Just it was all a lot, tons of laughter. Obviously, I mean, Dime loved pranking people, and that's why he carried his video camera with him, 24/7. Loved seeing people's reactions in terms of either getting pranked or the reaction to seeing someone else get pranked, and it was just complete, utter mayhem. And a lot of that was also just to kind of alleviate the boredom on the road, because most people think that when a band goes out on tours, it's just all glamour and just fun all the time. But there's a lot of downtime. Those 2 hours on stage, happen very quickly, and then it's on to the next city. So it was just a lot of pranks, jokes, drinking, booze, everything you can imagine. Strip clubs.
Oh boy, strippers. Yum, yum, yum.
Yeah.
What do you hope, Joe, the fans take away from this book, A Vulgar Display of Pantera, once they start to get to go through these photos and relive some things, man?
The main hope is just to obviously create a legacy for the band. Not that they haven't already done that, obviously that they have, but I'm just glad I was able to get this book out to provide a visual history of this great band, sort of from beginning to the very end. I just, and it's also an homage to Dimebag, just because obviously losing him was a great tragedy, and I'm just glad I was able to get something in print that shows his progression from being that 17-year-old kid that I met to eventually being the guitar god that he became and stuff. So I just hope that people just really. And another thing, I guess, is I also hope that it brings back a lot of great memories for people, when they think back to, I was at that Pantera show, or I saw that tour, and, it just hopefully gives people a good, warm feeling inside when they see the images.
Do you have a favorite Pantera moment for you personally, man?
It's again, just like with picking out a favorite picture.
Right.
It was probably early on, and I think I mentioned this in the book, went to Shreveport, Louisiana back in the club days with the band, and I believe this was on a Saturday. They played Friday night, and then Saturday it was pretty hot, so we're all out at the pool and stuff, and Dimebag's just sitting there just kind of checking me out. This was in the early days where it was like I was still kind of a novelty to them, and because I was this guy who looked like them, had long hair, was creative, but also, was kind of college educated and kind of book smart and whatnot. And, he was just sitting there checking me out, and I was just kind of sitting there checking him out, because here was this young kid who all he thought about in life was creating music, and just had a goal of, devil may care type of attitude. And the goal was to just be the biggest band in the world, and it just really motivated me to work to get to be a music photographer, which was my end goal as well. The newspaper business was good, but I wanted to really just work with bands and shoot musicians. And so that kind of moment of just us kind of checking each other out just really kind of motivated me, because here was this young kid who he had his goal in mind, and to hell with everything, he was going to get there. And it kind of gave me that attitude as well to try and do the best I could to become a music photographer, which I eventually ended up doing.
I celebrate Dom's music and life on here through Pantera and everything on the show. I occasionally have a Dom time on here just to throw it up for him, as always. So he's made an impact. That band and him personally has made an impact on me and everybody, man.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, and as Rex has talked about in some of the recent interviews we did, I mean, that band gave so much back to the fans. If you ever went to a Pantera show, they'd, stick around and sign everything until everybody was satisfied. Dime shared drinks with the fans, and you could even see it on some of the tours where they would take a little break 3/4 of the way into the show, and then they start, throwing shots of beer out to the fans and whatnot. So the band, a lot of it had to do with the fact that they were such big music fans themselves, and they knew how they were treated when they'd go see bands when they were younger kids, and they just wanted to give back to the fans as much as possible.
Now I want to talk about specifically just you as a photographer for this question. Do you prefer photographing music, sports, or models, or doesn't even matter, or do you have a preference at all?
I don't really have a preference, just because to become a photojournalist, what I studied in college, and to go on to work for newspapers, you essentially have to be sort of like a general assignment reporter. You have to be good at shooting pretty much everything from, say, a Dallas Cowboy football game to a press conference with the mayor to a photo illustration in the studio, maybe go shoot a new restaurant opening. So you pretty much have to be pretty well-rounded. So, but I think I like capturing action, sports, and obviously that's why the concert aspect was fun for me as well, as just being able to capture bands in certain moments live. And then now I'm heavily involved in the gaming industry. I do a lot of poker tournaments for the World Poker Tour and the World Series of Poker. And there again, when players are reacting to a big winning hand or losing a big hand or getting busted out of the tournament, it's all about just capturing emotion and the action. And I think that's probably my favorite type of photography, anything that involves, capturing emotion.
What made you want to become a photographer? What was that spark for you that said, well, I want to do photography instead of doing this or that? What was that for you, dude?
I think early on, I think I got my first camera when I was 14 and would sneak it into rock concerts in El Paso, Texas, which is the area I grew up in, and then started taking it to high school football games and stuff. And it just looked like something that was a lot of fun, and I had some decent talent at it. And then once I was a junior in high school, I met a photographer who pretty much mentored me. He was going to school at New Mexico State University, and he was walking down the sideline of one of our high school football games and had, a couple camera bodies and the big lens and the monopod and the whole deal. And it just struck me as being that, that's what I want to do. That just looks like a lot of fun, just creating images. And that's what I went after and eventually studied and became a professional.
All right, I'm going to ask you this question. You can answer it or not. We all know we lost Dimebag, of course. Biggest tragedy, I think, in rock and roll history. Can you remember that day where you was at when you heard the news about Dime's passing, man?
Right, yeah, I certainly can. I'd actually just seen the band, say, about 3 weeks before when they came through Los Angeles, which is where I was living at the time, and I traveled with them to Las Vegas. It was actually Orange County. They played the House of Blues there. Then came to Las Vegas, and then we ended up back in L.A. at the House of Blues there on Sunset. And I remember seeing Dime at that show, and never in my mind did I think that would be the last time I would see him. On that particular evening, I was at my girlfriend's house before she ended up moving in, and later on she became my wife. We had been dating for about 5 months at the time, and I was over at her house, and we were watching ABC, some program on there, and the local TV station did a teaser for their 10 o'clock or their 11 o'clock news, and said, nightclub shooting in Ohio leaves, 3 dead or something like that, and I didn't think anything of it. And then essentially and the news was maybe a half an hour away from coming on. And then I got a phone call from an ex-girlfriend that I hadn't talked to in a long time. And she essentially, and I didn't answer the phone, but she left a message saying, did you hear about Dimebag? And then my mind, it just sort of clicked thinking about the nightclub shooting. For some reason, I just thought to that, and then went online and just started seeing what news I could get, and that's essentially how I heard about it. And then we watched the news, and sure enough, that it was Columbus, Ohio, and the Alarosa Villa, and all that stuff. So that's essentially how I found out. And then I started getting a lot of calls, people calling me up asking if I was out with them, or if I was all right and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. But no, I was back home.
I just like to say, as a fan of Pantera and metal music, thank you, man, for this book of what you've done, because like I said, we all need this. Joe, how can folks stay in touch with you, man? Buy this book. How can they do that?
They can buy the book on Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com. The book actually is out there for pre-sale and pre-orders. A lot of people actually have already received their book. And the official release, where you can actually walk into a bookstore, is next Tuesday, September the 13th. They'll be available there at there at Barnes & Noble's and at other select independent bookstores throughout the country. In terms of staying in touch with me, you can always get in contact with me via my website, which is joegironphotography.com. That's JoeGironPhotography.com. There's a way to contact me there on that.
Joe, before I let you go, you care to do a promo for the show?
Yeah, no worries. This is Joe Giron, and you're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around. We got some great music coming up, and you only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and Uber City Radio. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, no worries.